Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a different kind of episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. A little bit of a surprise. This isn't, like I said, your typical episode. This is going to be an MLB trade deadline special. We're filming this on Tuesday. The trade deadline is about 30 minutes away. So we will be looking down at our phones to see if there are any trades going down here in the final half hour.
And they will.
If there's any trades that are announced after, we'll probably record another little section in the next day or two and add that on to this one. But we're going to give our quick little gut reaction to some of these trades that have been going down from, late last week into early this week, the moves that we really think could be needle movers for these teams. And there's been some teams that are just absolutely going for it. So we're going to start with, I think, the team that defines that the most, and that is the San Diego Padres. They, of course, have made massive moves just today. They acquire Juan Soto and Josh Bell from the Washington Nationals in exchange for Mackenzie Gore, Robert Hassel III, CJ Abrams, your NL Rookie of the Year prediction,
Yep.
James Wood, and Jarlin Susana. I mean, I looked at this initial trade package, and of course, Eric Hosmer was thrown in there as well. We now know Luke Voigt is part of that trade, but Hosmer would not waive his no-trade clause to go to Washington. We'll touch on him here in a minute, so they replace that with Luke Voigt. But I'm looking at what they gave up for getting Juan Soto and Josh Bell, and I'm really surprised that that is all it took for the Padres to go out there and get, a guy who's going to be an MVP candidate as long as you have him. And I get Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abrams are big league ready right now, but I'm a little disappointed, and that's all it took. And all we've heard about is how this is going to be a record-setting deal.
Yeah, I think that Washington was really starting to feel the heat end of that trade deadline. Once you get into, 1 year left on that contract, it changes the equation quite a bit. I think that they were thinking they were going to be, the belle of the ball, and everyone was going to be courting them, and they were going to be able to pick their, 4, 5, 6 prospect packages. And then, it gets down to the final day, and Padres are like, are we going to make this happen or not? This is what we're offering. And now that some of the other teams in contention have made deals, think about Mariners, no, not really in that Juan Soto talk anymore. I think that they just had to kind of take what they could get before they lost out even more.
Yeah, and the Padres right now are so far behind the Dodgers that I don't know, even with all these moves that they're making, we're going to talk about the rest of them here in a minute. I don't know if they're going to necessarily be catching the Dodgers, but once you get to the playoffs, it's a team you're not going to want to face. Fernando Tatis is now taking swings. He's getting closer to coming back. So, this team's a legit World Series contender. Not a team you're going to want to face in, a short series. Of course, the rotation still isn't perfect to me. I think that is the weak part of that team right now. But their bullpen got a boost. It was an interesting trade. Let's talk about that one. Josh Hader from Milwaukee to San Diego for Taylor Rogers, Dinelson Lamet, Robert Gasser, and Esteury Ruiz. And that trade, when I first looked at it, I'm like, what are the Brewers doing? Why are you giving up Josh Hader, who one of the best closers in baseball for years, just absolutely filthy? Why are you giving him up when you're right there? And I looked at Taylor Rogers, and he's second in pretty much every category for a closer. So I'm like, well, that trade just doesn't make sense. Then I looked at the rest of the pieces, and everything started coming together. And by the end of it, I'm like, now what are the Padres doing? Because they helped out the Brewers a lot. The Brewers got a good pitcher in Dinelson Lamet, a guy who's pitched in the big leagues, and some prospects. And Hader and Taylor Rogers, very, very similar stats all year. Rogers, a little bit of a higher ERA and fewer appearances, more strikeouts, one less save, fewer walks. The hits are pretty comparable to where they're at innings wise. But it just really surprised me. I guess the Padres aren't worse off. Lamet wasn't really helping them out, but it was just an interesting trade, and a trade I really didn't see coming. I did not expect Hader to be, sent out of Milwaukee.
See, and I disagree with you there. Well, I don't disagree that I was shocked that that trade happened. What I was not expecting was Milwaukee to dish their star closer. I think you mentioned it, a few episodes back, best closer in the game since Mariano Rivera. And if he continues like he's been going, San Diego just got the lockdown closer of this generation. Look at the division that they play in. They're looking right now, but they're looking to the future as well. Some of those other guys, flashes in the pan. Hader's been around the block. He has years of just phenomenal shutdown pitching. I think that they're like, you know what? Let's dish these guys while they're doing good, because we know at the end of the day, that guy is a lot better.
And I guess my biggest thing is you're helping a team who you could very well see in the playoffs. Brewers, obviously in the thick of things in the playoff race and in the race for the NL Central. And I mean, I think you helped them get much better than I guess you helped yourself, because I thought the Padres were definitely going to attack the starting pitching market. I thought that's where they'd look. I thought Taylor Rogers was obviously having a breakout year. He's pitching really well. And again, the Brewers still have some glaring issues. It's not like you helped them become the team to beat in the National League. They still need to find a way to score runs. It was just, everything was interesting about that one. I still am not really wrapping my head around how it makes sense. Obviously, now I get the Padres, that lineup's going to be absolutely loaded. They're definitely going for it. They're going to have this window that they have to win a World Series before these guys all leave. So, I mean, the pressure's on in San Diego in this trade. I mean, I still am at a loss for words, really, what the thought process was. Because again,
when I first saw it, I honestly thought that Hader was a piece of the Soto deal. When I saw that Soto was coming to San Diego, but none of the details had been released yet, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You go for a guy who, again, long-term success, can be the cornerstone of a team's future, and nope, they're keeping him for their own. I think that they're wanting to utilize him for years to come.
It's gonna be interesting to see how that all plays out. I think, of course, if we're lucky, we get to see that Brewers Padres playoff series. But I mean, the Padres obviously got better. I'm not sure if it was worth giving up the prospects, the numbers that they did for in that Hader trade. It obviously was worth it in the Soto and Josh Bell trade, but they weren't done. They also acquired Brandon Drury, who was a very hot commodity from the Cincinnati Reds, for Victor Acosta, a shortstop who you mentioned it. They're pretty set on shortstop for a long time.
Yeah.
Drury, though, he's a pretty solid hitter. I mean, he's very consistent. Again, there weren't too many massive names with a bat that were available at the trade deadline. Obviously, there are some guys better than Drury, but Drury was a very hot commodity because he was more middle of the pack. You were going to have to give up that much, and you really liked what you were getting back. I like this trade for San Diego, especially with Tatis still not back yet. So, I mean, I thought that was a home run hit for the Padres.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that lineup, there's really not anyone that you're dying to face 1 through 9 right now. So I think that they're just kind of adding that depth, and that was a good little trade for something that really didn't cost them anything.
Definitely one of the teams to watch in the wild card. I think they're 100% in the playoffs. Go ahead and etch that in stone. They also, the Eric Hosmer thing, I think everyone thought if Eric Hosmer said no, either Soto was not going to be a Padre or Josh Bell was not going to be a Padre. We talked about this morning. We were absolutely baffled that when Hosmer would not waive that trade clause, or the no trade clause, that they were still going to be getting Juan Soto and Josh Bell. It was really surprising, especially Hosmer's had a good season, but they did end up dishing him to the Boston Red Sox. We don't know what the Padres are getting back yet.
I tell you what they're getting out of that salary cap.
Exactly what I was going to say. They dumped that contract of Eric Hosmer, free up a lot of money for these other guys that they're bringing in. Hosmer was a massive contract when he left Kansas City for San Diego. Yeah. Now he's with Boston. He's still in the playoff race, I guess you could say. Boston obviously not eliminated yet. They've got some massive issues, but I mean, the whole thing about Hosmer, I think, that we're going to talk about is how him not waiving and the Padres still get both Soto and Josh Bell. That just really made little sense to me.
And one thing that I was reading online was Hosmer has a list of 10 teams that he can say no to currently. But if they waited until next year, it became a full-blown no trade clause and he could say no to anything that he wanted. And so I think that especially getting Bell, that's your first baseman. They were looking to dish him for really anything they could. I'm not expecting a lot to come from Boston right now. But they get rid of the contract. They get rid of the issues of having such a big contract as a backup or, as a very expensive platoon. And then they just get rid of that, the details of that contract of not being able to trade when they need to, and they can focus on what they want to do over the next couple of years.
Obviously that was the big thing, was dishing off that contract, and now we'll see what Hosmer does, and we'll see if he can continue his success headed to Boston and see if he can light a spark under that team. Now let's go to, I guess, the New York Yankees, who I guess made the first move. Really, Daniel Vogelback, obviously, but the first move in the week leading up, of course, Andrew Benintendi going to the Yankees from Kansas City, and then the Yankees also acquiring Frankie Montas and Lou Trevino for J.P. Sears, Ken Waldachuk, Luis Medina, and Cooper Bauman. Again, I think that was a pretty fair, balanced trade. I think the A's got back some good prospects, some solid prospects, and the Yankees got big-time starting pitching help with Frankie Montas, who we've seen this season being Mariners fans, and Lou Trevino, who doesn't, throw the gas that he used to out of the bullpen, but he's still a hard thrower, and he's a guy who can replace an injured Michael King, kind of shore up that Yankee bullpen down the home stretch.
Yeah, some of those injuries recently was kind of hurting to the Yankees, because if you looked at their starting guys, there were really there was one hole that they really wanted to fill. And then they started getting hit, and they didn't have quite as much depth as some of these other teams. And so filling in those holes, and then, going in and getting Benintendi for next to nothing. These are prospects that even their own fans, I don't think, could have listed most of their names. So guys that they're really not going to miss for some serious reinforcements here. They're not looking any less scary than they were when they were winning 10 games in a row back to back.
They are actually currently also trying to push to acquire Pablo Lopez from the Marlins, which would be an amazing get. It would cost them probably a little bit more than I think Montas, but we'll see if that trade gets done, because they are bidding right now against 17 minutes to the deadline. Some trades will still be announced after. And the reason that the Yankees actually went for Frankie Montas, he was not their top target. Their top target, Luis Castillo, of course, headed to the Pacific Northwest, joining the Mariners, who really made the first big splash of the trade deadline, and they gave up a lot for him. They give up two shortstop prospects, Noelvi Marte and Edwin Arroyo. They give up Levi Stout and Andrew Moore. Of course, there was miscommunication at first. A lot of people thought it was Dylan Moore headed to Cincinnati, but this Mariners-Reds friendship, I guess you could say, Mariners starting to just take away pretty much whatever they want. And Luis Castillo, under control through the end of next season. The Mariners have one of the top rotations in all of baseball with him. He is just pure dominance, pure filth, and he has been electric against American League teams this season. We talked about it a little bit when that trade first happened on Friday night, but this was a big get for the Mariners. A lot of people complaining about how much they gave up, but you got to give talent to get talent. And Luis Castillo, he is the definition of the word talent. He can really electrify not only your team, but your crowd as well. He is just a flamethrower. He's fun to watch. I can't wait to see him actually make his Mariner debut tomorrow, Wednesday, against the Yankees.
Yeah, I agree. He makes the team so much better than they were before that trade. That price tag does hurt a lot. You're giving up two of your top four prospects in what is regarded as one of the best, if not the best, farm system in the game. And so that's a lot of talent being dished. I think that the Reds are really going to be looking real good on the left side of their infield here over the next couple of years. but we got our guy. And that's, when you were asking the management, when you were asking the fans, when you were the players, not quite so much, because they like the guys that are performing, but they knew that those starting pitchers still needed help, and inning eaters, and making sure that you're not taxing those arms too much. Everyone under the sun knew Mariners needed to go out and get starting pitching. And what did they do? They got the best guy available. I mean, you can't get any better.
Yeah, I mean, it was Luis Castillo and Frankie Montas were by far the top two. Everyone had Luis Castillo a bit ahead of Montas, especially with that extra year of control. But I mean,
plus the A's are not going to dish their best starter to pitch.
Right, they're not interested
them.
in trading in the division. But I mean, Castillo, I looked at the numbers he's had against the American League, and he has 4 starts against the American League. He started against the Blue Jays, Red Sox, Rays, and Yankees, all 4 playoff contenders.
Real good teams.
And he has pitched a total of 26 innings, allowed just 14 hits, just 4 runs in those starts combined, 8 walks, and 31 strikeouts. I mean, that's the guy you want against those big time teams. Those are the teams you're gonna have to beat in the playoffs. He's proven he can have success against them. Only gave up 2 hits to the Yankees, who he faced a couple weeks ago. He'll face tomorrow. So, I mean, this guy can face the best of the best and still line him up and sit him down. He is ace stuff. There's no question about it. He missed some time at the beginning of the year due to an injury, but I mean, that's the only injury he's had all season, and it wasn't a serious one. He's come back and just looked absolutely brilliant, and he's fired up to be a part of a team that's contending, something he hasn't really gotten to do in a few years. I know the Reds were good last year, but to really come into a team that's trying to win, and he gets to join former teammates Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez, who they were teammates from 2017 through 2021. So, I mean, he gets to see those guys. And I mean, Mariners fans are excited about this guy. I know they're not happy with the price tag, but you don't want George Kirby just continuing to eat up these innings, even though he's been really good. His arm hasn't had that workload in his entire baseball career. So, I mean, get that guy who can eat up innings, move Kirby to a less, taxing role. I expect him to, start in one of those games of the doubleheader on Saturday with the Angels, which, I mean, adding Castillo, giving them that 6-man rotation helps out because they got a few doubleheaders left this season. But I mean, this rotation is just top to bottom, really, really good. Of course, Robbie Ray still gets owned by Houston, but he's great against everyone else, or has been recently. I'm really excited about where this rotation's headed. I still like Marco. He had a rough outing against the Yankees, but I mean, he's a contact pitcher against a team who hits the ball really hard. I just, from top to bottom, the Mariners have to have one of the top rotations in baseball. I think this was a great move. We didn't get Soto, obviously, but we can address the batting needs in the offseason. And of course, Mitch Haniger still on his way back. He is very close, likely to be back with the team this homestand. So all in all, I think that this was a very successful trade for the Mariners, and really the only big splash Jerry made. But I think it was a home run hit that could put them over the top.
Yeah, I'm still hoping, we look at bats, especially, as we start to look down the stretch, and we're needing more guys on the bench as we enter September. So I'm hoping that there's a little bit of movement here in the next 11 minutes. It looks like we did address a couple of, minor concerns that you and I had talked about. Backup catcher, kind of filling that role a little bit. A lot, in my opinion, and we'll go over that in a future Mariners mini. But I'm liking that they appear to be trying. Sure.
There'll be a Mariners mini that we'll record Thursday. We'll talk about the small Mariners moves, but Kurt Casale joining the team. They had just traded for Jake Lamb back he's a Pacific Northwest kid. He's back there. And Matthew Boyd, I think, is a great get for them. He's was a starting pitcher for the Tigers, never pitched with the Giants. That's who we got him from. But I mean, he can eat innings as well. So I think all in all, Mariners, they've addressed those needs that they need to go improve on.
Yes.
But the team ahead of them in the AL West also got a lot better here at the deadline. Houston getting Christian Vasquez from Boston. Of course, they have now a better hitting catcher than Martin Maldonado's been. I don't know if you necessarily have many catchers in baseball that have a better throwing arm than Maldonado, but Vasquez can sure hit. And now they have a 1-2 punch there, depending on what they need to go to. But the big piece I'm circling this trade deadline, this is out of everyone, this includes Juan Soto, is Trey Mancini going to Houston along with Jaden Murray in a 3-team trade. Seth Johnson and Chase McDermott headed to Baltimore, and Jose Siri headed to Tampa Bay. I like that get for Tampa Bay, especially with Kevin Kiermaier out. You have that speedy outfielder, but Trey Mancini is the guy. I mean, he's got an incredible story, obviously, just a really likable guy, beating cancer, getting back. And I mean, he made his money hitting long balls to left field in Camden Yards. That's what he did. He hit for power, and then they moved the wall back, and he couldn't hit home runs out there anymore. It was a lot harder to. Now he goes to Houston. He has the Crawford boxes where it's even easier than it was in Camden Yards. He is going to hit the ball a lot. He's going to have a lot of home runs down the stretch. He's going to be a dangerous guy come playoff time if you're playing in Houston. This guy is just likable. He's going to get the fans behind him. He's going to draw in some people that probably still aren't too fond of Houston. Looking at him, they're going to be like, okay, well, good for him having success, I guess. I think this could be the move at the trade deadline that you look at and say that might be what helps Houston get to the World Series.
Yeah, there's not a lot about Houston that doesn't infuriate me. And that does not end at their just childlike designed stadium. And the fact that it just complements what he can do with ease, what he has done since coming into the league. I'm scared. that lineup that was starting to ease up a little bit from their just overly dominant years now has that punch again, and he's going to have people on base. He's going to hit homers. He's going to fit in perfectly there, and I can't even hate the dude for getting them even more wins.
Yeah, again, I like Trey Mancini. I still hate the Astros, so I'm not saying that I hope that he gets a World Series ring. But, you know, again, I think this is a great play, and I know he was
Comeback
heartbroken.
Player of the year, at least.
He was heartbroken leaving Baltimore. He was on the field in Arlington saying goodbyes to Baltimore Orioles staff, and he's said those are the ones that I credit with saving my life a couple years ago. So again, emotional trade there. And Jose Siri to Tampa Bay, I think, is a great deal. I talked about Kevin Kiermaier out for the season. You know, you still have Randy Arozarena and Wander Franco out with injuries. So I think Jose Siri gives you that speed, is going to help out, obviously, defensively. So it's going to be interesting to see how he bolsters Tampa Bay, I guess, helps them out, try and get or hang on to that wild card spot. So I think that might have been a sneaky get that helps Tampa Bay get to the playoffs. Let's now go to the LA Dodgers and their acquisition of Joey Gallo for Clayton Beeter. And I want you to start with this one because Joey Gallo, I know you have some opinions, some thoughts on him. Never worked out in New York. Had a little bit of success last season, but this year it has just been absolutely rough. What are your thoughts on Gallo to the Dodgers?
You got to look at what changes. I mean, what changed from Texas to New York? I mean, was it the geography? Does he need to be, south of a certain latitude line? Does he need to be in a red state? Does he need to what does it take for Joey Gallo to be successful?
Now he's not going to a red state. He's going to California.
He is not. He's going to as blue as New York for sure. You mentioned it could be the beard. I don't know. Beards do have power. I do feel that, but he's starting to grow it back out. I don't know. I thought that this year he would kind of snap back into place, because how could he not? I mean, with that lineup, there's no weight on his shoulders. He just has to go in there and he has to play baseball, and he has been doing a terrible job. When you are that piece of the lineup that all of the fan base, everyone but your head coach basically, is saying, get him out of here, something's not going right. And especially if that's the Yankees, you are going to receive a lot of hate for that. I don't know, maybe a change of scenery will do him some good and he can snap back into the role that he was designed for, which was hit a home run or get a strikeout trying. It seemed like there were way too many strikeouts for the amount of home runs that were coming in the Bronx, which is one of the better places to get home runs.
I was just going to say that with that short porch in right, there's no excuse to not be hitting home runs in Yankee Stadium. But I mean, if you heard him talk the last couple of weeks, he knew his name was being floated around out there. It seemed like he was done being a Yankee. The pressure was too much. Because I mean, when you're a Yankee, there is a ton of pressure on you. Just didn't seem like he wanted to be there anymore, which could be concerning because when he was with the Rangers, he was never with a team contending, and that's where he had success. Is contention putting too much pressure on him? Because if so, he's just going to have a career of mediocrity where no one really talks about him. So I hope that's not the case. But I mean, there's going to be a ton of pressure on you headed to the Dodgers as well. So he's got to figure things out because, I mean, he's always been, like you said, a strikeout or a home run hitter. It's time to start balancing those numbers a little bit because right now there are, like you said, way too many strikeouts for the number of home runs. All right, we got 2 trades just in, so we're going to get gut reactions to this one. The big one, the Los Angeles Angels have traded Noah Syndergaard to the Philadelphia Phillies. So the Phillies had been in on all these starting pitching talks. Of course, they were obviously interested in Castillo or Montas. We're not going to be able to outbid the Mariners, Cardinals, Yankees, or Dodgers. They're going to have to settle for a middle tier guy who, of course, has top tier potential, and Noah Syndergaard really hasn't had that much success this season with the Angels. Been kind of up and down, a lot of more downs. But I mean, now he's going to a team back on the East Coast where he made his name with the Mets. I don't know if he's going to be enough to really help them become a wild card favorite. But I mean, at least they went out there and they're trying something. So, I mean, I guess credit to Philadelphia going out there. You're going to at least have a guy who can get you some innings as long as he can stay healthy.
I was going to say, you said up and down this year as far as the Angels and Syndergaard are concerned. No, him playing the entire year is a big win. And he hasn't had the dominance that you expected from a New York Thor. But he has done what they needed him to do, eat innings. At no point are any of those teams' struggles to be put on his back right now. I think that's a really good short-term get for the Phillies. They're still trying to get into those playoffs as well. So I think that he fits in real nicely there.
And I'm looking at the prospects that are, this is breaking news, so we don't know 100% what's going on. But it seems like a pretty fair trade. A couple of prospects just being sent over there. You're going to eat a little bit of money from the Syndergaard contract. But I mean, all in all, I think it's a pretty balanced deal. Angels definitely sellers, especially they also traded Brandon Marsh. I don't think we're really going to talk about him. Also to Philadelphia. So Marsh and Syndergaard going over there together. I think Marsh is going to help the Phillies a little bit more than Syndergaard. But another trade that just came through. There is breaking news that there is going to be no Pablo Lopez to the Yankees. So that is done. The Yankees are going to be sending Jordan Montgomery to the Cardinals. Cardinals getting some pitching help there. But another interesting piece, Harrison Bader from the Cardinals to the Yankees. That is a pretty good defensive guy for the Yankees, especially when they've used Aaron Judge a lot in center field this season. Obviously, Hicks has had some injury issues and some inconsistent play, I guess you could say. But I mean, Harrison Bader could be a defensive guy, especially one that can come in late in games, kind of fill the void if you need some substitutions. I think this is a pretty good trade for both squads. Cardinals, they get Jordan Montgomery, who again is an inning eater. So all in all, I think this is a pretty fair, balanced trade both ways.
Yeah, and especially for two teams that are either trying to make the playoffs or trying to go deeper into the playoffs. This help for help kind of trade, it's not going to be a make or break for any team. It's going to just be that assist. Here's a little bit of reinforcements to get you through and kind of plug into place where you can to keep the rest of your squad happy and healthy as you go further along into the end of the year.
So again, these are trades just coming through. We just hit 3:00 trade deadline. There still might be a couple of moves that come in late. We'll see if we get any while we're recording this, but we still got a couple more moves we had circled. I think one that you kind of fell in love with while we were waiting to start this was Anthony Bass going from Miami to Toronto. This one is just going to be one we touch on real quick, along with Zach Pop, another right-handed pitcher for Jordan Groshans, who is a very good shortstop prospect from Toronto. But I mean, Anthony Bass, your eyes lit up when you were looking at his numbers. He has just been downright dominant for Miami this season. A guy who can just go out there and you know what you're going to get from him. He's going to give you a chance to win. He's going to hold on to your small leads. This is a really, really good pitcher going to a Toronto team that has had a lot of issues, especially with that bridge from your starter to your closer. Yes. Anthony Bass definitely fills that void very, very nicely. I think this was a massive get for Toronto, and I think you agree.
Absolutely. We've been saying it since the beginning of the year. There is no reason why Toronto should be struggling so much with the offense that they have. If their pitching is even remotely competent, they're going to be winning a lot of games. Their starting rotation has been competent, and their closer has been above competent. Yes. They've just been struggling with the relief in between those roles. And so to go out and get someone who isn't a closer, isn't really even long relief. I was looking like, okay, where has he been in these games? He's pitched about 45 innings in 45 games. So he's coming in on those high leverage situations. That's not necessarily the end of the game, but cleanup duty. And he is doing what he needs to do. ERA looks phenomenal. The wins and losses, I know you hate judging relief pitchers on wins and losses. It's so skewed. Yeah, it's so skewed, but he does what he needs to do to help out his team. And he needed to be on a better team is what he needed. And so he's found that in the Blue Jays, who at the beginning of the year, I had them going to the World Series. This is a big step in that direction to get them a little deeper into the playoffs, or make the playoffs. Let's be honest.
You were coming up with the way to describe where he throws in these games. We have a lot of Mariners fans that listen to this. He fills the same void as Paul Sewald almost. I mean, that's pretty much what he is to the Marlins. Not going to be that closer, but probably your best reliever. So all in all, a fantastic acquisition for the Blue Jays. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy. They're not going to have him pitch every day, obviously, but a guy you can go out there in the playoffs and count on being that bridge to Jordan Romano. Another reliever who is on the move is all-star closer Jorge Lopez, going from Baltimore to Minnesota. Minnesota has their closer now. Obviously, they have their guy. Four prospects that are all going to be pretty solid for Baltimore. Of course, Baltimore selling a little bit, but I mean, pretty much what we anticipated, I think, when we talked about them. Little moves, not really giving up guys that you're going to have for years and years, giving up those guys that you have control of. So again, I think this is a very good trade. Minnesota still fighting to try and win that AL Central. I don't know if this move is going to put them over the top to where I feel comfortable saying, yeah, they're winning the Central, but I mean, it's a very good pickup for them. They have that dominant arm in the bullpen now, a guy you can count on to go in there and slam the door.
Yeah, it fills a need on a team that was seeing a lot of success, kind of evened out a little bit by absolutely no means is leading the race by a long shot, but in no means out of the race either. And so I think that that's a nice, solid improvement to what they needed to address that will help them go further than what they would do before that trade.
And I think we have one more trade that we talked about, and it is another starting pitcher. We just talked about the Cardinals getting Jordan Montgomery. They also made a move to get Jose Quintana and Chris Stratton from the Pirates for Johan Oviedo and Malcolm Nunez. Of course, Pittsburgh not interested in doing too much. They did keep Brian Reynolds, which shows that they're at least going to try and put an entertaining product out there. These young guys are coming up. O'Neal Cruz looks good. Brian Hayes. So at least the Pirates look like they're trying, unlike teams like Cincinnati and Oakland. But I mean, Jose Quintana, a veteran guy, been there, done that, pretty much done it all. He's that veteran presence that you want in the back end of your rotation. A really number 4 guy is who I look at as being the veteran, not massive name that can go out there and get the job done. He's that. And I think, again, St. Louis, they're definitely trying to strengthen up that rotation, which was a weak spot.
Yeah, no, 100%. When you have the MVP front runner on your team going out there and winning games almost on his own, getting those arms to really ease that burden of how much run support you need, how much offensive power you need, is going to be a huge help for a team that again is right there in the thick of things.
And one more trade at the buzzer, I guess,
Buzzer
that just
beater.
came across. And I think you were looking down, you might have seen this one, and that is the Royals have traded Whit Merrifield to the Toronto Blue Jays, which this is interesting for the whole vaccination thing. Whit Merrifield has been out saying he's not vaccinated. Obviously, you got to think he's going to be now, because that is going to be a lot of games he's missing if he can't play in his own home ballpark. So I'm sure that is pretty much
can't even enter his home ballpark.
That is pretty much has to be something that they talked about that they are going to do. So that is a interesting move. Again, I think they waited a few too many years to trade Whit Merrifield. They could have got absolutely a ton in return for him. Now they're just going to have to take for whatever they can get from Toronto, who now has a veteran in that lineup that can play pretty much anywhere you need him to.
Yeah, no, that's going to be really good for them. Like you mentioned, just kind of filling a hole, and it had to be talked about beforehand, right? I mean, you're not going to shell out for a guy that can't even enter your country. So I don't know. Maybe the Royals guys, you had Benintendi going to New York, and that's okay. Yep, this is what I'm going to do to help my team win. I guess they really weren't concerned about helping their team win when their team wasn't winning in the first place. So you collect your paycheck and you stay home for a little bit of vacation while your team throws AAA and AA guys at one of the highest powered offenses in the league. So to join that offense, I think that's going to be good for the player and really good for Toronto as well.
And the Royals had success in that series with Toronto. I think that surprised a lot of people.
One game.
That's way more than I thought they would win. I did not think it would be close. And one last thing is, there's not a trade. It's more so the lack of trade is Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ will stay put in Chicago. We talked about this again before we started recording. Ian Happ doesn't surprise me too much. I mean, he's a very consistent guy with control for the Cubs. It doesn't surprise me. It was going to take a little bit more to get him. Wilson Contreras really stuns me, especially when he was saying his goodbyes in the dugout for the Cubs. He thought he was going to be gone. You talked about it. There's really no benefit to the Cubs in keeping him, except for maybe selling tickets. So, I mean, the top guy at the list of guys that you'd think would be traded is staying in Chicago after all.
Yeah, which is shocking seeing the market for catchers right now. I mean, there are a lot of teams, Mariners included, but they weren't going to go after someone like that. It was more of a backup role. But there were a lot of teams that either needed some serious help at catcher, that was a glaring hole in their starting lineup, or they needed help. And that is one of the positions that you want to platoon the most, because it is exhausting to catch day in and day out. And so I don't know. That's actually what I was looking down at when you caught me just staring at my phone like, okay, we're 5 minutes out. They're playing in tonight's Chicago game, both of them. And so I don't know if it was the Cubs were just asking far too much and they kind of shot themselves in the foot. People called their bluff and okay, we're not going to give you that. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but that was very surprising. I thought for certain Contreras would be on one of these contending teams that would have given an arm and a leg, but not two arms and a leg for someone of that caliber.
It's very surprising. I think he's the biggest surprise not being on the move. Other guys who are staying put, we can confirm Carlos Rodon and Jock Peterson staying with the Giants. Not too surprised there. Martin Perez and Matt Moore, I'm really not surprised at all, especially with the Rangers' issues pitching. And there is not confirmation on the Red Sox guys yet. Rafael Devers obviously isn't going anywhere. Xander Bogaerts, it's highly anticipated he's staying put. But the big one, JD Martinez, is really the one that they're looking for confirmation, and Nathan Eovaldi. Those are the guys that could maybe get buzzer beater moves, but it's not looking like that is going to happen. So the trade deadline officially in the rearview mirror. Baseball is going to be flipped on its head here. What many people anticipated being a quieter trade deadline, of course, completely turned around with the Juan Soto news, and everything all of a sudden went chaotic. And here we are again. It's a shifting. We now know who's going to be with who down the stretch. Jacob, I appreciate you hopping on a late notice podcast, half episode, I guess we can call it.
In my
with the he outdressed me for sure this week. I realize I can't wear a white shirt with this white wall behind me. That'll be the last time.
Is that a white shirt? Oh,
I mean, it's not as white as the wall, but it's white.
Not as white as it used to be.
Exactly. It's a D. Gordon Mariner shirt. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
That'll do it for this little half episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. We'll have a Mariners mini coming out on Thursday for the Mariners homestand, recapping this road trip that just doesn't seem to want to end. And then we'll be back to a full episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast next week. We will see you then for who knows what else could, any buzzer beating deals on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast next week.